Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of the Pain to Power podcast. I'm your host, Justin Banks, and I'm so thankful for getting the gift to do another episode. The gift to give another message. I'm thankful for life. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for God waking me up and telling me to get up and get to work, to get to my purpose, and to get to my destiny. Now, if you're listening to this, that means He woke you up too. That means we both have gotten the same message. And I pray that you do something productive with it. Think about it. People are dying every day. People are suffering every day. Take advantage of not being a victim of violence. Take advantage of not having to go to the hospital because you're feeling sick. Take advantage of not having to walk by the casket of a loved one. Take advantage of the opportunity you've been given. And also, I'm thankful that you're listening. For you to take the time out of your day and be a listening ear to my message means the world to me. I take that as love that you're giving me, and I hope that my message is love coming right back to you. We all want love to be reciprocated. We all want the love you give to be given back sometimes. And the older you get, you realize that kind of love can be scarce and scattered. So you need to hold on to the ones that give you that kind of support, that kind of care, that kind of empathy, and be sure not to manipulate it. There's no need to give so much unconditional love to people with conditional love. I'm talking about the people that say, I'll love you if you do this for me. Do this for me, and then I'll help you. If our world as we know it has taught us anything, it's that life is too short to stress over people who could care less about you. Life is too short for people who only like you when they want to get something from you. Life is too short for the scammers, the vultures, the moochers, the full-time beggars, and the part-time givers. Move on to your greatness and let those conditional lovers watch from the sideline. People show you who they are when those stressful times come and their true character shows. Believe them when they show you that, and from there on, you need to act accordingly. Now, this episode, however, talks about someone who personally gave me and others true unconditional love. That person is my father, Timothy Banks Sr. Love the man to death and also miss him dearly. This episode is being recorded on May 7th, which means it's Dad's birthday. And I wanted to do an episode to honor him, but I also wanted to provide helpful information to people on how to deal with the grieving process. Why grieving? Well, on October 17, 2019, this man that I love so much passed away. And I've never grieved over someone like I have with him. Now, I think about the many individuals losing loved ones in this day and time. And I can't imagine the pain of people when they can't be inside funeral homes with their loved ones who's passed, and they can only watch on the computer who's streaming the event. Something that happens to us all is losing the ones we care about. The people that taught us how to ride a bike, the person that gave us the best hugs, the person that you always considered a friend since you were little, the person who you really, truly loved. We all lose them eventually. And knowing that fact never makes it any easier. I remember listening to my father talk about his own father, watching my grandfather on his deathbed. He sounded so strong, like he accepted the fact that my grandfather would pass eventually. After he passed, however, he told me that you're never as ready as you think when death strikes your parents. Transitioned to last October, and I remember our family making the decision to send Dad into hospice care. I remember us as a family making the decision to put him in end-of-life care. Families do it every day, but of course it hits different when it's you and yours. This may sound kind of crazy, but at that moment, I almost felt relieved. Now, my dad's death hit like a train, but seeing him suffer, being in and out of the hospital hurt even more. Allow me to explain. So we as a family all noticed last year that Dad was moving a little slower than usual. He just didn't look well. Transition to April, and he received the grim cancer diagnosis. Believe me when I tell you that the 7 months from April to October was some of the hardest, if not the hardest time for us as a family. Through this time, my father was going to radiation, dialysis, and was hospitalized literally every couple of weeks just to treat infections. Now, I mean the serious infections like sepsis, blood infections that can damage the organs and lead to death. It is so hard to see the man that taught you how to play football, taught you how to be a man, deteriorate and not be the person you once knew. When I heard his cries, I began to shed mine. When I saw him in pain, I felt pain too. Our leader was down. To see the person that was once so vocal, so boisterous and full of jokes, to now be without a voice and in a hospital bed provides a trauma beyond compare. I compare his life to the book of Job, witnessing extreme catastrophe in his life, which then makes us question God and his power. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person who has questioned God's power, especially during trials and tribulation, specifically when death strikes. I wonder why God allows us to go through so much. Why does he allow our loved ones to endure so much stress and strain, constantly being beat up and beat down by life and its challenges? Job had those same questions, having his health taken away, children taken away, and land taken away. Now, Job didn't receive his new health, new children, and new land by finding those answers. God rewarded Job when he did three things. Now, of course, there were moments when he had doubt, but he didn't lose faith in God. He still believed in him, even though all of the physical and emotional pain that he endured. Job also understood there are some things that we will not have all the answers to. There are certain things that are meant for God and God alone, and we must humble ourselves to know that we won't have all the answers. But that is because we are as powerful as our Creator. Knowing that our Creator has so much supremacy, though, we should have faith that a power of this magnitude can release us from our strain and our hardship. Lastly, God rewarded Job when he stepped in and prayed for three of his friends who had represented the teachings of God incorrectly. How does all this relate to us? Number one, when life begins to truly hit, having crazy faith and belief in God's powers can reward us tenfold. Job received more blessings after being tested. If you don't know, in this story, God allows Job to be tested by Satan. Something important that I want to state is that just because it happened in the Bible doesn't mean it was the only time situations like this occurred. How do we know that God hasn't allowed Satan to test others? How do we know that God hasn't allowed Satan to test you? Just because you don't have a book in the Bible doesn't mean you don't have testimony. Just because you're not Job doesn't mean you don't have a story worth writing about, a story worth telling that can be just as compelling as the book of Job. I'm sure there are some Jobs listening, and we all have had our faith tested. And sometimes a faith test is our hardest test because it is a test of the spirit. It is a test of the will. Can you endure? Can you hold on and believe? We also have to understand that Job was a righteous man before he began to suffer. He wasn't spewing negativity and sin in this world before hardship began to hit him. So don't think just because you are living for God that bad things won't happen. But also remember who gave Job all of those blessings. God may have allowed Job to struggle, but he also has the power to take you out of the struggle and give you more blessings than you ever had before. Lastly, Job defended his three friends who told him that he was going through strife because of his sin. Now, from the outside, if you looked at Job and his friends, you may think that his friends were doing everything right because they didn't lose any land, their health, or their children. But they still were representing God wrong through their teaching to Job, and that made God angry. But when Job stepped in and prayed for his friends, all was forgiven and Job received a blessing. So even though Job went through so much, he was still a more faithful servant, a more righteous servant, a better representative for God than his friends. So what am I saying to you? Sometimes the most faithful are the most afflicted. You may go through so much hell because you represent so much power. This is the story of Jesus. Don't let the pain punk you. See it as a stamp of honor, a stamp of your strength. Evil knows that you are the competition to his demise, and you must persist until you reach your destiny. Now, this may sound good right now, and I hope that it motivates and even inspires you some. But the day will come when neither my words, maybe your family's words, or even your pastor's words may be enough to give you strength. There were several things that I mentioned when I read my father's eulogy that I want to say to you. Yes, he had cancer last year, but since the age of 12, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, has had a myriad of surgeries, including 2 transplants and 30 eye surgeries, 2 heart attacks, 1 stroke, COPD, and he never smoked, countless infections. He was even cured of his diabetes after receiving a pancreas transplant, but then the pancreas failed after 2 years and he became diabetic again. Add high blood pressure, and then he was diagnosed with cancer. Many would call that a hell on earth. But just like Job, he kept the faith. He still was able to love his 3 kids and love his wife for 30 years. Some people can't do that with all the health in the world. Keep in mind that some people can die just from having a heart attack, just from having a stroke, just from having kidney failure. But yet he made it to 56 years old. Take this as a lesson for your own life. Something had to give him strength. Something had to keep him going. He wanted the best for his family, so he kept fighting to make sure that his family was okay. That was all of his focus for most of his life. But this also reiterates 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16. Never stop praying. We prayed before and after each surgery. We prayed after the heart attacks. We prayed when his blood sugar was so low that he was unconscious and rushed to emergency. We prayed, we prayed, we prayed. We prayed to God when Dad went into the hospital. And every time Dad was able to stand up and was able to walk out of that hospital, that was only God's answer. That was God answering our prayers. God saved my father's life too many times to count. And I will always be grateful for his grace, mercy, and willingness to listen to all of our prayers for all of these years. So I ask you to never stop praying. He answers. It might not be answered the way you envision in your head, but it will be answered in a way that is best for you and your well-being. Now, Dad went into the hospital for the last time in August, and he stayed there for 2 months until his death. Get in tune with your spirit so your prayers aren't selfish. I wanted my father to continue to live, but lying in that bed, not being able to speak, not being awake, wasn't living. I know it wasn't living for my dad. Eventually, I started praying to God, saying, Lord, I love you and I trust you. Just may your will be done. May what you want be best for my family. Eventually, my father passed peacefully, but it made me think about the only time my father told me about his own prayers. He said he prayed to God that before he died, that his family would be taken care of. As we sat in that hospital with our tears, that was something I thought about a lot. And we as a family are doing just fine. I couldn't imagine time being spent without my dad, but we as a family are getting through it strong. So remembering what my dad prayed, I thank God, and my last words to my father was simply, well done. It made me think about when we all lose loved ones. And I mentioned reading this in my father's eulogy, that death isn't always pain winning. Sometimes death is God saying, well done, come home. Of course, it hurts to see our loved ones suffer with illness, but we have to remember that the body is just a vessel for the spirit. Think about a loved one that you lost. It wasn't just their smile that you loved. It wasn't just their physical attributes. You loved how they made you feel. And feeling comes from spirit. And spirit does not die. Spirit only transitions. So feel comfort in knowing that what you love most about that person has not died. The spirit's vessel may decay and deteriorate, but the spirit that made you feel good, the spirit that made you feel loved, has only transitioned into peace and salvation. Remember this when the grief comes and the sadness comes. Also, when grieving, understand that your emotions are real and it is okay to feel them. Don't internalize the anger. Don't internalize the sadness. Something that I had to learn myself, that the 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and sadness, do not have to occur in a certain order. I thought I accepted my father's death and I thought I could move on. But denial consistently can bother, and it made me still view his passing with confusion at times. The best thing you can do is acknowledge those emotions and understand you're in these stages because of the care you had for your loved one. Find a trusted person you can talk to about these stages. Don't feel ashamed about going to a grief counselor to better understand these stages and how to get through them. You may also want to engage in positive distractions. Distractions that increase your productivity and get your mind off of your grief. It could be reading books, reading inspirational books, going to a park, talking to your family and friends more. Exercise is a fantastic stress reliever. From the time of my father's diagnosis to the time of his death, I decided to train for a 5K and dedicate the run to my father. I was getting up at 5 a.m. to run, then prepare to help take my dad to radiation, take him home from radiation, then go to work, attempting to put a smile on my face for the kids that I would teach, even though I was still worrying about my dad so much. Sometimes I even had to rush home to help take my dad to dialysis, especially when we didn't have a wheelchair ramp, and then I had to help carry him out. It really takes me back to some bad memories and some bad times. I really appreciate my mother for being such an amazing caretaker, because caretakers get worn down too. With all that being said, however, Running and exercise can take so much stress away. Had I not ran before my day truly began, I may not have been able to handle the stress the day was going to bring. And even now, it relieves my stress and takes my mind off of those bad thoughts. Even when you run, stress releasing hormones are released into the body. And I don't think about those bad thoughts as much as I used to. I just want you to know, as the listener, that you can get through. Life is not over. You still have a life to live, and you need to do it with passion, and you need to do it with vigor. Do this to honor your loved one. You may have had loved ones go through so much before their passing. So take advantage of the health you have now, the family you have now, the opportunities you have now, and leave a legacy so great that people will love you just as much as you love your departed loved one. Your Pain and Power quote comes from Robert Frost. He said, "The best way out is always through." That means not staying in the grief so long that it becomes your life. Take a step a day to get through. It's possible because you're strong. It's possible because God is stronger. I hope this was a blessing to somebody. I thank you and I love you, and I pray that you're powerful.